Hello and welcome to Trekkie and Beyond, a Star Trek podcast. I'm Monica.
And I'm Andrea, and welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of Strange New Worlds. That Monica and I are huge, avid Star Trek fans, and we love Star Trek. And this episode, our discussion of this episode, does not accurately reflect our views on the show as a whole. So please keep listening to this podcast because we do love Star Trek. We just really don't like this episode. This episode is called Among the Lotus Eaters. And I'm sorry to say that it should be called Nap Time. This episode is about the Enterprise crew. They're returning to a planet that sort of brings up bad memories. They lost 3 of their own on an away mission. Spock was gravely injured, and Captain Pike just doesn't really feel good about it. And as they go back there, they have to confront some issues from their past. And I guess learn to grow within themselves and find themselves, even when they've lost themselves. And that's your reactions, Monica. What did you think of this episode?
I have mixed reactions to this because I like seeing Erika. I like the spotlight of this edition of Erika Ortegas. And it checks all my major boxes: away mission, romance, action, drama, ABC plot. But the way they put this together is not melding well for me. I don't get it. I don't see it. It didn't vibe with me well. What did you think?
This episode did literally nothing for me. I kept waiting for me to love it. I kept waiting for I kept waiting for me to be excited. And I understand this is probably more for people who love the original series, because it was a like continuation from an episode from the original series, but like totally went over my head. So I could definitely take or leave this episode. It was, if there was ever a filler episode in Strange New Worlds, this is that episode for me. It felt like they were trying to make a point that only would have made sense if you saw their previous episode. And I felt like they did that last season, or was it on Discovery, where they said previously on Star Trek, and they showed like scenes from the original series to like get people up to point, like, okay, this is why you should care about this episode. And I don't remember seeing any of that at the beginning of this episode. So to me, until I did my research afterwards, and I was like, oh, this is a continuation, still was like, I wasn't invested. That's why I went over my head.
Right, and also the scene changed a lot from that. We'll dive in deeper to that, but the castle didn't look the same and all this other, so it doesn't seem like it's a sequel.
Yeah. But in the opening episode, we get our most dry couple in the world, Pike and Captain Captain Patel. I just don't see the chemistry between them, and I understand she's really good at her job, but I don't know. Whenever I see like these type of like everyday interactions, and not like they're on I feel like when they're on opposing forces, I see more of the chemistry together. But when they're like, "Oh, we're home and we're gonna have some us time and dinner," it's just like, you guys bore me. You're a Girl Scout and he's a Boy Scout. Like, no, I need like y'all to always be on opposing forces and stare at each other, because I wasn't seeing the vibes, I wasn't seeing the connection. It lost me at their dinner. What did you think of the opening scene?
First of all, I like the fact that he was hosting dinner and he was trying to make time for their relationship.
Yes, good thing
There's
too.
many
Yes.
captains that we see, like Janeway, in which there's like, you're not supposed to know what goes on in their personal life. So I appreciate he was trying to do a work-life balance thing. There was issues later, but he was trying to think, and it worked for a little while.
No, I'm all for the work-life balance.
Yeah.
I just want them to have. I feel like he has more chemistry with his number one than he does with her when they're on like when they have their like little relaxed times.
Right.
I need that to change.
Yeah, for me, it's the acting from Patel. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't she doesn't give me these vibes that she's as interested. There doesn't seem to be on-screen chemistry between the two.
Yes.
If
And
there was more of that between their acting, I think it would be more believable. But maybe she's also trying to, I don't know, be the strong shoulder captain role. But then I also saw her recently as a lawyer, so it's really hard for me to understand her role within Starfleet.
I agree. Oh wait, hold up, people. I'm sorry. Pause and time out. We are just having a very rare occurrence. Do you guys understand what this occurrence is happening right now? That Monica and I, this is like what, the third time, fourth time that she and I actually agree on an episode.
And the scenes within this.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We need to frame this episode somehow, some way.
No.
No, our episode.
Yes.
And just like say that we actually agree that we both were like, yeah, on this episode. Yes. I'm very, very pleased. Love you, co-host. But back to the episode. Unpause now. Whenever I see Captain Patel and Pike on opposing sides, when they're arguing back and forth, that's when I see the most chemistry between them. And and yes, you are completely right. I love that they are making time for each other, like my Spock and T'Pring tried to do. You know, I love that. I just wish they would still have that energy all the time, because it's like you're running hot and cold. And I want to be invested in your relationship, because obviously you guys make each other happy. And I don't want to be bored by this relationship. I don't want to see him with someone else and like, oh yeah, he has so much more chemistry with this other character, be with this character. Like, no, if you love her, let me see it.
Right.
Like, don't run into his arms, because no, she's stronger than that. She is a strong, independent captain. But like, let there be a little something more than just, we've been married for 50 years and we don't know how to keep it interesting anymore. We just like, I don't know. It didn't do nothing for me.
Okay, so I'll share another example between Dr. Hugh Culber, and Paul Stamets. You could see in their acting, there was chemistry there. Yes. Whether they were waking up next to each other, they were brushing their teeth together and talking. There was definitely a vibe there that brought off, oh, they're a solid couple. And they had issues. I mean, they separated for a while, but they came back strong. They adopted and so on. But I'm just saying that we could see that chemistry in other relationships that we're just not seeing here.
Yes. Even in friendships, we're seeing it. Yes. And I want more of it. I want it consistently not when they're arguing, because that's the only time I really truly see chemistry between Pike and Patel is when they're arguing with each other. And I don't really, that gets old after a while.
Right.
It's like, it's always fun to have a nice little debate with someone, and like, even with the person you're with and you're in a relationship with, to have a lively little debate. But if that's the only way I'm seeing you are like interested is in our debates, then something's got to give.
But she did show that she was interested, because she gave him a present.
She did.
She gave him a Mariner Keystone that then became their tether together.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can really pull out of this part. From what we could tell from season 1 of Strange New Worlds, I think T'Pring and Spock shared a necklace to show their promise and commitment to each other. And I don't know if that was her way of showing that she was interested in a little bit more than possibly just dinner on occasion.
I like your thinking. Okay, I agree with that. Guys, this is a rare occurrence. We're both agreeing on the same thing. Okay, so moving on to like the meat and potatoes, I guess the A plot of this episode is an Enterprise cruise is going back to Regulus 7. I know my words, I promise. And they are basically trying to clean up a mess from 5 years ago. And see on this planet from a flyby from another starship that they have the Delta, like the little Delta symbol, the little combat symbol that's growing in the gardens outside of the castle. And Pike explains that they immediately lost three crew members of their away mission right as they landed because they were attacked out of nowhere. Spock was grievously wounded. He almost died. And he had to basically abandon the mission, and they considered it a failure. And now, because that Delta symbol is like grown in their garden that you can see from space through a flyby, they're like, they must have left something behind, and we have to go and fix our mess. Which, if I feel like if 3 people were killed in your last run-in, why would you only send 3 people again?
Yes, I agree.
Like, why? Like, I understand sending the Enterprise again, but like, why not send a backup ship to like be their backup?
Right.
Because they've already proven hostile. Make it make sense.
And I would think that they could also bring down some weapons that was camouflage and maybe like had some sort of fingerprint, so only like they could use it, like some
or
sort
like
of
a knife or a sword or something.
Yeah. At least they didn't beam down in their uniforms again.
Yes. And like I understand you needed people who could defend themselves without a phaser, but like there's no one else on your ship who can fight in hand-to-hand combat. There's no one else on your ship who can fight in hand-to-hand in any way, shape, or form. Like, you can't even bring like a long stick with you as protection, like a makeshift staff. Like, really? Make it make sense. Because these guys have weapons and you're going up against them with no weapons.
Yeah, I agree with you. They should have brought down, beamed down with 2 or 3 additional security staff. And then it would have made me think that possibly someone else would die. Like, even if they didn't kill off another red shirt, like, I would think that, it would, I don't know, heighten suspense that it's possible that they could, right? Because otherwise, I don't think these main characters.
I mean, because like every time you bring a new character on here, they get killed.
Right.
And we know someone's going to die. And it makes us invested in the rest of the story.
Right.
But you have 3 of the main characters down there. I'm going to be super honest, though. I also am happy that Ortegas didn't go. Like, her whole story, I do love Ortega. I do love her. And I want them to have a great storyline. But like the way she described, and we're going down there and it's choppy weather and choppy winds and we have to get down. I was like, are you serious? Oh, this episode just seemed so slapped together that I just wasn't believing anything that was happening. And I was like, if Pike could have always piloted the ship, why did you ever need her in the first place?
Yes. And if something were to happen to them, then also this planet would have access to the ship and all the technology that's there anyway.
So like, it made
the shuttle.
Because if Pike never needed her to pilot because he could pilot, and if number 1 also had her job before she did, why would you ever send the pilot down? There was just so much that was not making sense to me in this episode. But neither here nor there. They get down to the ship and they start to, La'an starts to experience some like headaches and some ear ringing and lost time. And they're all experiencing different aspects of like different ailments, but they don't know exactly what it is yet until they are captured and brought to the castle where they see Lord Zacharias, aka Zach from 5 years ago. And he's still alive and is now in their leader. And I don't see the point of this episode.
And he's still wearing the uniform from 5 years ago at the bench.
I don't understand. Oh my God, this episode is so hard.
5 years he's been wearing that shirt.
And it still looked pristine, apparently. No holes or nothing. And like he explains to them that the ringing in their ears, the hard to think, the lost time, the fear, and some of the forgetfulness is due to the radiation in the air that only people outside the castle like experience. And he basically is like, I can't wait for you guys to forget. And then we see them like honest to God forgetting who they were. And it's just, it's very hard to like explain how weird that scene was.
Right. If the castle was supposed to be like a sacred, have a force field and protect them from adverse brain function, then why did Mabanga and Pike start to hear ringing in their ears?
Yeah.
In that scene. That shouldn't have happened. Inside the castle, outside the castle, fine.
We come back and we see Pike, Mabanga, and La'an are stuck in this cage together. They're all sort of like knocked out, but then they awaken, but they also sort of lost a lot of time. And as they're having full-on discussions about what's going on, they're forgetting the answers to the questions that they just answered before they asked the question. And that just seemed very chaotic. And then even as they go to sleep and wake up the next day, or quote unquote sleep, and come back the next day, the guards are letting other people come and say, hey, they had a bad forgetting. And we're gonna like help him. We're gonna help them get together. And how there are certain things you can remember, like the color of your clothing tells you what your job is. But you can't remember your name, but you can remember the color of your clothing tells you what job you have. But how they have homes, but like they just accept the fact that they're going to forget everything every night, but the people in the castle don't, and the guards don't forget everything. It was, and like how Pike had to be like, my hands aren't someone of a stone person. How would you know? You don't remember anything. Like, it's very confusing.
Yeah, I am perplexed about the guards the most. Because I don't understand how they could do this on a routine basis, be out of the castle.
Oh, Zach answered that.
Okay.
He answered that, and I missed it. I had to rewind because I had the same exact question. He answered it when Pike went back to the castle to fight for their memories and stuff. It's the ore from the castle. They made the helmets out of it, so the helmets block it. Because I was like, how are the guards not forgetting their job either? He says it so quickly that if you're like, I have to go back and like rewatch it. And
I do remember hearing that, but I didn't make the connection. Thank you.
It made me think of Magneto's helmet, like how Magneto's helmet always blocks out Professor X's mind reading thing. So I was like, oh, they must do the same thing for the radiation, which is also still a very thin plot thread, but they answered it. So I guess they thought it made sense.
Yeah, so their guy, Luke, he tattoos some notes on his body to help him orient to know which shelter to go to. And it seems like you would have to have a lot of tattoos all over your body to help your memory.
Yeah, and how he had marked off some tattoos, but not others. And how they have a totem in their home with like the history that tells them like what's going on. But who made the totem? Was it you or was it people from the castle? Because you don't remember nothing. So how does the totem give you the actual answers? How can you be so enlightened but so dumb at the same time?
Right. And if you remember feelings, but with the totem, you're remembering like a language. Like you have to translate that into knowledge, logical sense, up or down a totem.
Because yes, you remember walking, talking, but those look like hieroglyphs type things on there. So how do you speak through hieroglyphs? Somehow they are going to wage a full-scale attack when they're greatly outnumbered against the castle to get inside to get their memories, because their memories are somehow locked up in like a casket type thing. That's what all the people from the field believe, which makes no sense. Even in like Starfleet and Star Trek universe, makes no sense. And they get inside the castle. He beats the crap out of Zach, and Zach has to like explain to him all of this, like why they're safe inside the castle and why, and no one else is. I'm just sorry. It's very hard to try and find the sense through the mess.
Right. So Liana's, I think she strikes with some, like she has I think she was hit with a sword.
Mm-hmm.
Mabanga was shot at, but the guards had advanced weapons, and there were like a dozen guards in front of the castle before, but then we only saw them like fight a few. So where did all the guards go? Especially when you have an enslaved population. Yeah, it's not adding up for me
At all.
I also don't understand how Pike was able to make sense and to develop a plan to get in to the castle, let alone the fight itself. But he had enough memory to execute a plan to get into the High Lord's chamber, where only Zach was located at that time.
And it makes me like wonder, because we see how they are retaining like their common sense almost down on the planet, but up in Enterprise is a whole different level. Like as they're starting to forget, it seems like you see all these grown adults just standing around like, what am I doing? What's going on? Oh my God, like all on the ship together. And it's like, how is it that down there on the planet, Pike and Mbenga and La'an were able to somehow come to terms with what's going on without having like a full-on like meltdown, but people on the ship were like, I just want to go home. You don't remember where home is, so where are you trying to go? What are you doing? Like, make it make sense. Like, you are like, why are you reverting back to toddlers? It didn't seem like anyone back down on the planet was reverting back to toddlers. And yes, while they did have a group of themselves to help them remember things that they could do, it just seemed very weird that everyone on the ship sort of like became useless.
Right, because the ship has the advanced technology that you would think that they would be able to figure out what's going on maybe after the fifth person came down with the same symptoms, like an outbreak, right? What are the common traits here? What's different? Oh, we're in this airspace. Let's get out. Maybe we'll just send one little shuttle out to that space or something else, like work out. But it seemed like Spock was the only one that had like an idea. At least let's hold these tablets with our identity. But other than that, they seem to be lost without Pike.
Yeah. And I'm going to be super honest. I thought number one would have been unaffected by it because of her augmentations. I thought it would be similar to what happened when they were at the when they were on that planet when the episode when it came out that she was augmented.
Yeah.
I thought like she would have been like able to like bypass it and been the only like smart person, and then it was like, oh, this is why having augmentation is a great thing, because we are able to survive things that other people can't, so we're like an extra line of defense. I wasn't expecting her to be as affected. I felt like the whole storyline with Ortega trying to get to her cabin, trying to get back to where she was very forced. She's like, I fly the ship. Do you know how to fly the ship? Or are you just guessing right now? Because I don't care if you know you fly the ship unless you actually know how to fly the ship. So it seems that like she was somewhat getting her memory back, but at the same time it wasn't. But like if the radiation is making you be forgetful, how can you force yourself to remember? How can you force yourself to remember something you can't remember?
Right. And now that you shared the news about the helmet, I'm thinking, wow, they could have replicated helmets for everyone or some other way, but they weren't even working with engineering to conduct some sort of scientific research to figure it out.
It's hard, people. But we learn after everyone like is sort of healed and everyone gets their memory back down on the planet and back on Enterprise, that the cause of it is a radiation from one of their like split moons is causing this issue to happen on, like is causing the memory loss on the planet. And so they decide that basically they're not breaking the First Order by like removing the radiation. It's like they're saying the radiation stopped them from being able to develop, so let's go ahead and remove the radiation out of the way to give them a chance to actually develop on their own. And they do. They remove the radiation, and Pike ends up having his little reuniting with Batel and lets her know that like she brought him home and he was wrong. And it's always nice to hear when a guy says he's wrong, when he was actually wrong, when he's trying to sabotage something that was going perfectly. And so it's nice that he apologized. And I like that her answer wasn't exactly yes. It was, we'll see how it goes after the next 30 minutes.
Right.
Because at this point, you've shown this woman that, can she trust you again? Or if you have another thought process of, I may be bad for you, I may be bad for your career, why are you making a decision for her instead of asking her if she have a problem with it? Because if she says she doesn't have a problem with it, she doesn't have a problem with it. But at the end of the episode, I find it very cheesy when she was like, my name is Ortega and I fly the ship. That sounded like such a child thing to say. Yeah. I was just like, really? I want more for her than that line.
I agree with you. There was also either last episode or episode before that she stated something like, oh, the ship practically flies itself. Well, it doesn't. They need a pilot to go down to the planet, and they need a pilot to navigate through this choppy area. So they do need a pilot. I'm glad that it wasn't AI that took over, something like Zora to take over. But I was hoping to see this character. I was hoping her lines would be better and just better written, and I was disappointed there. I'm glad that she was able to see her. I was glad. It's nice to see her quarters. Nice to see her get more screen time. I just didn't like the execution.
But what are some of your final thoughts, Monica, before we end this episode?
This episode left me hanging regarding the planet because, yes, I guess Zach is no longer in power, but then how do they reset the civilization? Like, okay, now we're going to remove the garden with the decal and remove the technology, and then you're like out. So they still are going to enslave people?
Don't know. Because they can't interfere. So all they can do is remove the radiation that was stopping their growth. And we'll see. Maybe we'll see what happens in another 5 years.
Ay.
And
that's my biggest problem, is that I'm used to these away missions solving a problem. And I feel like the problem persists. The only arc we really saw was with Pike's relationship and maybe Ortega.
I mean, they did fix a problem, which was the radiation from the outside source of the moon.
Okay.
But it's like then they went back to the grand order, or the of not interfering with planets. So like at this point, like, look, we helped you. We removed the Starfleet operative that was there. He's in jail. We're going to remove the moon so that way, like, you guys can progress like you're supposed to. But it's I guess with everyone's memories, I feel like the only reason people were enslaved was because they didn't have their memories. But now that I don't know. I don't know. It's very hard
to revolt over a class that was in power for what they say centuries, right? So that's still hard to do. That needs some second contacts and third contacts, but I don't know if they could do that because they're not warp capable. I just feel like once again, I didn't have closure regarding the civilization, and I don't like what's going on there.
Neither do I. And then hopefully when Monique and I come back next week, we will have a very exciting, much more happy-go-lucky, our normal, maybe arguing type of episode that you guys are used to, and that you guys that you guys love, and that you guys continuously come back and listen to. So, anything else to add?
The only positive I can end with is that finally we see some hand-to-hand combat from Ensign Mount and Pike. It's not just phasers, so he's stepped up there. That's it. I'm out. I'm out of juice.
Well, everyone, thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope it was as entertaining as it possibly could have been. And as always, I'm Andrea.
And I'm Anika.
And live long and prosper.